This is CBC Here and Now.
If you use Tinder or Grindr and you swipe right, you might get more than you bargained for.
A warning about online dating from the health minister as new COVID-19 cases are announced. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes.
And I'm Anthony Germain at our province's busiest shopping mall. Normally on a Thursday night there'd be lots of people here, but these are not normal times that we live in. Not normal for students and their parents either. Lots of big news tonight. Carolyn.
Thanks, Anthony. Well, we start tonight with the latest numbers. The COVID-19 cases continue to climb. 8 new cases today, bringing the total to 183. At least 143 of those, or 78%, are related to Call's funeral home. In Canada, there are 11,000 cases, and a significant milestone globally, the world saw 1 million cases today. And with the crisis expected to continue for weeks, we are now starting to get a sense of how schools will handle it. Here and Now's Peter Cowan is live in the newsroom. So, Peter, what's going to happen with that?
Carolyn, there's still a lot of uncertainty, but at least today they kind of unveiled the big picture of how they're thinking the rest of the school year is going to work. Let's take a look at some of the key details. So first thing a lot of people are wondering about, public and end-of-year exams. Well, the good news for students, they're canceled. But learning will continue. That's going to happen online. Students will still have access to things like guidance counselors, and there will be grades awarded. They'll basically look at all the work up until March 13th, and that final grade is going to come later in the month. So those are the general principles, but how are they going to roll out? Well, the Minister of Education says they're working on all those details right now.
The cancellation of exams does not mean that learning is ending or that the school year is over. In anticipation of the cancellation of exams, the school districts have been working to develop continuity of learning plans. These plans involve teacher support and the use of online learning platforms. For example, through the Center for Distance Learning and Innovation, otherwise known as CDLI, students can access high school courses and teachers can provide feedback, guidance, and support.
Okay, Peter, but what about those students who don't have access to computers or the internet?
That's a really good question, Carolyn, because even some of the areas you might traditionally go, like the library, of course, are closed. And they did recognize that today, and they're working on a plan, for example, being able to send out equipment from the school board to children who may not normally have access to a computer. And the Education Minister, Brian Moore, saying he's also talking about internet service providers, about what sort of plans they may be able to make available so that houses that might not normally have internet are still able to be connected. But you know, one of the big questions is, does this mean the end of the school year? And they're not ready to give up on it just yet. What they've said is right now they're canceling exams no matter what, but they are still hoping that maybe classes may be able to resume sometime before the end of June. Carolyn?
Thanks, Peter. That's Here Now's Peter Cowan reporting live. And as we just mentioned, 143 of the total cases in this province are connected to a group of people who were mourning the loss of loved ones at Call's funeral home. It's now known as the Call's cluster, and it's led to the blaming and shaming of some of those people online. And one of those targeted has been Shannon Harris in Buckins. His girlfriend passed away, and her wake was held at Call's during the time frame when the virus was spread. Now, Harris has tested negative, but says he's faced harassment from members of his community. He says the blowback is making the grieving process much worse.
Like psychological torture. I haven't been able to do anything to clear my head because I was too busy trying to settle back into the routine of it all. And then all of a sudden, bang, that was dumped in my lap. There's a lot of good people here, and there's a few people that just hear something and run with it. And that's infectious. Not knowing the full story before you make somebody out to look like a potential threat.
Now you can hear all of Shannon Harris's interview tomorrow morning on CBC Radio on the St. John's Morning Show. Well, Dominion on Stavanger Drive in St. John's closed its doors today and told customers to go home. That's after an employee tested positive for COVID-19. The employee last worked more than 13 days ago. The grocery store says it's stepped up cleaning at its facility. And the CIBC has confirmed an employee at the Hamlin Road Bank in St. John's has tested positive for COVID-19. The company says anyone who visited that location between March 20th and the 24th is encouraged to self-monitor for symptoms. Public health officials are also notifying any individuals who may have been affected. The branch is now temporarily closed. Well, let's bring in Anthony now. You're out of self-isolation after 14 days. Must feel pretty good, but I must say you do still look pretty isolated where you are right now.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Karen, last time you and I were here was just 3 months ago or so for Christmas.
Christmas, yeah.
And take a look. I mean, there's nobody here. Normally Thursday night this place would be packed. I mentioned off the top of Here and Now, these are not normal times. And people in many jobs, of course, are finding these are not normal times. And that's particularly true for people who work in natural resources, who have 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, or 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off. Because now when you come home to Newfoundland and Labrador, you have to go into self-isolation. So I met up today with Joelle O'Coin because she's waiting for her partner to come home and she doesn't really know what to do. And as you'll see, it's a strange way to do an interview these days. So Joelle, tell me a bit about your situation, that little boy there and your fiance. What's going on with you?
I have a partner who works away, and we're just a little concerned about how to self-isolate when he comes back home in a couple of weeks.
He works as a miner in another part of Canada. Does he do 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 1 month? What's his deal?
His current rotation is 2 weeks away and then 2 weeks home. But with the travel time, he's really only home about 12 days. But for the next rotation now, once he gets home, it's going to change to a 4 and 4.
But he still has to self-isolate for 2 weeks, right?
As far as I'm aware, he does have to self-isolate when he gets home.
Okay, so what kinds of challenges does that present to you?
Well, and our situation is not unique, but for us, I guess the plan was to try to self-isolate him in our bedroom for 2 weeks. But I mean, it's going to be really hard with Michael because he's going to want to see his dad and get up in his arms and play like he always does. Right,
and you have a mild case of asthma too, right? A condition?
I do, yes, and I'm a little concerned about obviously catching the virus with that condition.
So, given that situation, what options do you have? How do you get around this, or how do you deal with it?
I'm not sure, and I mean, I feel like in the news there hasn't been a lot of talk about how to self-isolate one parent when they work away and they come home, especially facing a challenge of a child that won't understand that they have to stay away from their parent. Okay. So actually, my parents have offered to. For us to come stay with them for the 2 weeks and let my partner self-isolate on his own in the house. However, I'm not sure if that's the right choice to make as well, because I wouldn't want to expose them to anything if I were to catch something while I'm home before my partner gets back.
Now, Joelle, you still have a bit of time left before you figure out what it is you're going to do, right? Can you tell me about that?
Yes, we have another couple of weeks before my partner gets home. So I have a bit of time to try and figure out what to do. And like I said, this is changing every single day. So we might, who knows what will happen with the new, I guess, developments with the virus.
All right, Joelle. Well, listen, good luck. And thanks a lot for sharing your story. Appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
Now, if you're in the same situation where you're not quite sure what the self-isolation rules are, there is a number to call, and it's not the 811 number. You should be seeing this number at the bottom of your screen now. It's 1-800-863-6582. That's our Red Cross number. So if you have questions about the logistics of self-isolation, that's the number you want to call. Now, I think that's the first time I've interviewed somebody through a pane of glass who wasn't serving time. This is a very strange world we're living in. If you're going through a difficult time right now, I'd like to be able to get a chance to tell your story. Can't get them all, but send me an email, anthony.germain@cbc.ca, and we'll do the best that we can do. Carolyn?
Great. Thanks so much, Anthony. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye now.
Well, one of the big issues facing the healthcare system is the supply of personal protective equipment, or PPE, in hospitals. The health minister was asked about that today.
At the moment, we are relatively well off for masks. Our challenge lies around gowns. The previous week it was around gloves. And on any given day, the stocks of each of those may fluctuate. Normally our system would have around 60 days of burn rate with the inventory we carry. There have been occasions when that's been down to 10 days. But certainly our challenge has been we're getting parts of our orders and we're getting the rest delivered in an unpredictable fashion.
Well, with a worldwide shortage of masks, some people have started making and selling their own. But as Here and Now's Heather Gillis explains, one infectious disease expert is warning people to be careful.
Erin Sonley has been following the COVID-19 crisis since January. Since then, she's sewn more than 300 face masks using 2 different designs.
Been contacted by lab technicians, healthcare workers, firemen, just about anybody who has to be out in public.
When you receive your mask, you open it up. This is the front view. This is the back view. This is the filter or the padding.
She sells the masks for $10 or donates them to people in need.
Every $10 mask I sell, I can cover enough material to give away 6 or 7.
As the fight against coronavirus continues and a shortage of protective medical equipment looms, many wonder if homemade masks, such as Sonley's, are effective at protecting people from COVID-19. One nursing professor says homemade masks are not as effective as surgical ones or the preferred N95 masks.
They are the last resort. If there's nothing else, they are absolutely better than nothing.
She says homemade masks may be beneficial for people caring for someone at home with COVID-19. However, Donna Moraleo has a warning.
People often will contaminate themselves by not handling the mask properly. So I would be very concerned about people touching the front of their mouth, the mask, which would be contaminated, and then touching their eyes, their nose, or their mouth. So it's very easy to self-contaminate when you put them on, when you take them off.
The Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Janice Fitzgerald, says that medical-grade masks are the only ones certified to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. She says homemade ones may not offer the same protection, especially if they don't fit well. She says nothing is effective as hand washing and physical distancing. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, last night we tried to show you a parade in Gander to honor frontline workers, but we accidentally showed you the wrong video, so here is the right video. It was a big parade through the town 2 days ago to thank essential workers who are still on the job. As you can see, a really big turnout, few tears it looks like there. Cars decorated with balloons making their way through Gander. The convoy ended at the hospital where healthcare workers came out to greet them, while of course keeping their distance.
We've got snow-eating weather in the east. I'll tell you what that means, and I'll have your full forecast coming up.
Welcome back. The completion timeline for the Muskrat Falls project is now shattered, with Nalcor saying it can no longer predict when the troubled mega project will be completed. Terry Roberts explains.
In the construction world, it's known as a black swan, when an unforeseeable event can practically derail a mega project. And that's exactly what the COVID-19 pandemic is doing for an already unstable Muskrat Falls project. Nalcor has declared a force majeure event, meaning it is temporarily freeing contractors from their liabilities and obligations for work on critical generation and transmission contracts. Hundreds of workers at Muskrat have been sent home, so work on installing the turbines has been stopped. And the contractor struggling to develop the computer software for the transmission line has called in outside experts to help work out some pesky bugs. And technical challenges at the Soldiers Pond switchyard outside St. John's are now in limbo because the work site has also been demobilized. Major setbacks for a project Nalcor hoped to complete by the end of this year, and one already more than $5 billion over budget. So Nalcor is now saying it can no longer reliably predict when Muskrat Falls will be able to generate electricity, or when that new transmission line from Labrador to the Avalon Peninsula can be energized. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, Newfoundland Distillery in Clark's Beach has shifted production from alcohol to hand sanitizer for frontline workers. They're calling it Fighting Spirit. The owner, Peter Wilkins, explains what they're doing.
It's one of those things that suddenly emerged, and then we had some requests for it. So we started looking into how we could make it. So we're absolutely delighted to be able to do something more useful than make spirits. And we'd never envisaged that we'd be making it. But as soon as we heard that we could, it was quite an easy shift because hand sanitizer is principally made of alcohol, but very strong alcohol. And it is a sort of, technically a poison. And we've put all the warnings on the label to advise people that they really should not, under any circumstances, try drinking it. I would definitely advise against it. I think, it would really clean all of your insides out quite dramatically. It's based on the old, I think it's a 3-cent stamp of the Fighting Newfoundlander. And we just thought it was amazing and then sort of nailed it immediately. Well, I mean, we're absolutely sort of thrilled and honoured, and in a sense, it's, the only thing we'd want to be able to try and do. And, it's amazing that all of us can work towards doing something that is useful and hopefully will help everybody through this, in any way that we can.
It's rain, drizzle, and fog season. The fog rolls in and all of a sudden there's a big dent in the snowbanks. But why does that happen? In spring, when warm, humid air moves in and sits over the cold snow, it causes the surrounding air temperature to lower and the tiny parcels of air cool and condense, which creates a cloud close to the ground. That's the fog. That process releases heat, and because humid air is a better conductor of heat, that melts the snow quickly. So next time you hear RDF in the forecast, remember, it's the snow eater.
Well, Ashley, I just learned something new. That was so interesting. And I guess with all that fog that's out there now, we could lose the snow fairly quickly?
Yep, that's exactly what's going to happen. But the temperatures are going to drop. Today we saw a very different story depending on where you were. Let's take a look at that photo there. That is of St. John's. So plenty of cloud cover and fog and drizzle through the day. And this is what it looked like in Corner Brook. Absolutely gorgeous afternoon. Temperatures much warmer as well. Take a look at these daytime highs. 12 degrees for Corner Brook, 10 in Stephenville, and then again as you head a little bit further east and to the north, those temperatures are much cooler anywhere really in those northeast facing areas are seeing temperatures 2, 3, 4 degrees through the day, and above zero up through Labrador as well. Lab City reached a high near 3 degrees today. But as we head through the night tonight, those temperatures are going to drop, certainly up through Labrador, down into the minus single digits. So everything's going to change right back over to some flurry activity. We're going to see that happen down through the northern peninsula as well as anywhere along the northeast coast as those temperatures dip below zero, just near or just a little bit below zero as we head through the overnight. So Environment Canada has issued a freezing drizzle advisory, and you're going to expect that pretty much after midnight through the first half of tomorrow morning. And really, that's going to continue through the afternoon as well. The temperatures are going to bump up just a little bit, but for the most part, we're going to see that potential for flurries or drizzle through the day again, because we're still in that north onshore flow. But you'll note along the west and south coast, we should see some sunshine tomorrow afternoon at some point. Certainly the southwest is where the best chance of that will be. And then up through Labrador, it's going to stay unsettled, generally looking at that chance of some flurries and or freezing drizzle through the day. But there's your temperatures across the island again. Southwest, the warm spot, 8 degrees should be the afternoon high in Port aux Basques, maybe a few degrees warmer than that. 5 in Corner Brook, so significantly cooler through parts of Central as well, going down to 1 or 2 degrees as your daytime high tomorrow afternoon. Again, a little bit more breezy, anywhere from 30 to 50 kilometer per hour winds expected, and with that potential for some drizzle through the day. Up through Labrador and Nain, looking at a nice day, -9 though, so cooler than today, but going back down to below zero for the remainder of the island, of the big land rather. -2 will be your afternoon high in Happy Valley Goose Bay. So heading into Saturday, we could see some sunshine peek out, it looks like at this point, but still looking at unsettled conditions with that potential for some flurries, maybe even some light snow as well through parts of the island. And then up through Labrador, eventually we'll see some clearing skies into Sunday morning as a ridge of high pressure starts to dominate. So here's where your temperatures will be sitting a little cooler again, so hovering near or just below zero, even above zero along the west coast. But Port aux Basques, you're going to drop back down to 0 degrees. So say goodbye to those warm temperatures, at least for the weekend. -4 for Cartwright, 0 will be the afternoon high in Lab City and Nain. Another sunshine day, but your temperatures well below zero. So I wanted to share this photo with you. Even that fog and the snow looks pretty nice. This is the Waterford River as seen from Mount Pearl. So thank you to Corey for sharing that wonderful weather photo with us. And if you have any weather photos that you'd like to share with us, send them to nophotos@cbc.ca.
I am sick of seeing the snow, but I gotta say that picture is pretty as a postcard. Thank you so much, Ashley. We'll talk to you tomorrow. So to recap tonight, 8 new cases of COVID-19 were announced in the province today for a total of 183. And earlier today, Health Minister John Haggie had a bit of an unusual warning for people about the use of dating apps during this crisis.
They are very common and have been seeing an increased uptake over this challenging time around COVID-19. But let me warn you, if you use Tinder or Grindr and you swipe right, you might get more than you bargained for.
Now, despite the pandemic, the City of St. John's is staying on schedule with the latest phase of the Big Dig on Water Street. The work to replace old underground infrastructure will be done between Ayers Cove, heading east to Cliffsbaird Cove. Many businesses in the area are closed now because of the public health emergency. Starting this Monday, a section of Water Street will be converted to a one-way eastbound traffic. The city says safety measures among workers will be in line with the latest COVID-19 guidelines. Construction is expected to last until June. And you know, spring has arrived in the capital city when this happens. The City of St. John's is ending its winter parking ban. As of 7:30 tomorrow morning, all winter parking restrictions, including the ban on overnight parking, will be lifted. Well, thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. Hope you can join us again tomorrow. The CBC News from Nova Scotia is coming up next. Good night.